Hello, warm welcome everyone, despite the rainy and cold afternoon here in Cambridge, to our first Philippine Nurses Association UK or PNA-UK World Cafe for this year. I am so honored to be part of this event, and I would like to thank you all for registering and attending. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge our technical team, Mr. Roger de los Santos and Mr. Michael Duque, for making all these possible. Without further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Milieri, also known as Millennial Nurse UK, your host for today. Together with me is my lovely co-host, Mr. George Bermudez, also known as Manang George on his blog site, Filipino UK Nurses, to discuss to us the house rules. George?
Many thanks, Mel, and welcome everyone. I believe we have some visitors all over the world. We have representatives from the United States. We've also seen people coming in from the UK and the Middle East. So welcome everybody. So thank you so much, Mel. And before we start, we just need to go over a couple of house rules, really. First, please mute your device to avoid any feedback. Also, please type in your questions to inside in the chat box. So for those who are new with Zoom, there should be a chat box that you could use, and we would have a short Q&A session after our last speaker. And lastly, we respect everyone's opinion for today, and yes, we will try to hear out all your questions later on. So yes. For our start, our first, for our welcome remarks, we have a Mary Seacole Trust champion, a nurse, and also he is also a Florence Nightingale scholar, and currently he is the lead nurse for the preoperative assessment in Chelsea and Westminster NHS Foundation Trust. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Joron Jimenez.
Hi everyone, I'm JJ. I'm an interim core committee member of PNA-UK or Filipino Nurses Association of United Kingdom. I am a nurse and I work for Chelsea and Westminster Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust as a nurse lead in Planned Care Division's Preoperative Assessment Clinic. I am welcoming you all for this first ever World Cafe session of PNA UK. We aim to have a safe, comfortable space for Philippine colleague nurses to speak and be heard of their experience working in the health sector. As an organization, we want to nurture our vision to have one voice in the nursing agenda across the United Kingdom's healthcare landscape and beyond. That includes the Filipino nurses that are working in the NHS and in the private sector. In today's World Cafe session, we have invited Philippine nurses colleagues from different backgrounds, expertise, and experience. You will hear a Filipino colleague who's been here for 18 years and someone who's been here merely 3 years. We have also invited someone to speak about COVID-19 experience, as well as a guest speaker who will give insight about her experience working with Philippine nurses in the intensive care unit. We want this to be relaxed and engaging for all of us. Therefore, I encourage you all to send us questions, comments, and suggestions during the webinar. Just please be mindful that the speakers will be talking about their own personal experience. So therefore, I'm just going to ask you to please respect the views shared and the feelings expressed, and hopefully be able to learn something from what they have been shared. I am fully aware that you are all busy, professional and personal schedule, but we, the PNA UK, would like to say thank you for taking time to join us for this session. My only request, please do keep an open mind. a listening ear, and compassionate understanding of what is to be discussed throughout this session. Again, thank you all, and you'll have a wonderful experience in our first ever World Cafe session.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. JJ Jimenez, for your very visionary, open, and warm welcome speech. To introduce our first speaker for today would be talking about his experience in the NHS around two decades ago. We'll be talking about the NHS around 2 decades ago. He is a NICU charge nurse and a lifetime member of PNA-UK. Please welcome Mr. Albert Millari.
Hi, good evening to everyone. I'll be touching about the NHS two decades ago. So probably this is just an outline of the most important events with the NHS that happened 20 years ago. To start with, year 2000, that's the creation of the NHS plan, which is a 10-year modernization program of investment and reform. This outlines the strategy for more doctors, more nurses, more beds, and 100 hospital building schemes by 2010. With improved access to hospitals and primary care and a renewed focus through performance targets on decreasing waiting times. So this probably is the reason why from way back in 1998 to this year, was the start of the massive and continuous recruitment of nurses. And then the Commission for Healthcare Improvement was created in January 2001, which is the first organization to formally assess the performance of NHS hospitals. And then the introduction of hospital rating system, which also began in 2001, but later on scrapped in 2005. And then all of that were reorganizations happened and bills have been passed. Coming to 2003, which the agenda for change was formed. And I think this is the changes in which we are all part of. It is the pay among NHS staff. April 2014, I think this is the first establishment of the first 10 foundation trust in the UK. By January 2009, Nhs Constitution was published, outlining a revised set of rights and responsibilities for patients and staff. It sets out 7 principles on how the NHS should act and make decisions, 6 core values, and a number of pledges to patients and staff, as well as list of their rights and responsibilities. These values treating patients with dignity and respect and giving them informed choices. By April 2009, CQC was created. This is the Care Quality Commission. This is an independent regulator of all health and social care services in England, created following the merger of 3 regulators: the Healthcare Commission, the Commission for Social Care Inspection, and the Mental Health Act Commission. It takes the responsibility for regulating and inspecting health and social care services in England, including services provided by the NHS, local authorities, private companies, and voluntary organizations. From this time, NHS reforms, reorganizations that led to the creation of further bills. And then by January 2016, as we know, and I think I remember this one when our junior doctors took strike action for the first time in 40 years as a result of spending cuts. By then, new contract eventually comes into force in 2016. Coming now into January 2019, NHS England published the long-term plan. This document aims to set the direction of the health service across the 10 years to 2028. The plan includes ambitious goals to reduce the number of avoidable deaths from cancer, heart disease, and stroke, and to put into place crisis care teams that respond within 2 hours. All of this that I've mentioned, you can find them all through the NHS Newfield Trust website. It's www.newfieldtrust.org.uk. So for my, I graduated in 1994 from Manila Central University, and as many of you did, immediately attended review classes for licensure examinations. The struggle with finding a job at that time is so hard because of competition. I even went into sales and marketing, going house to house, promoting products, became a real estate agent, selling house and lot and condos, worked as a pharmacy assistant, service crew in a fast food chain, which is Jollibee, but looking for something more. And then I went to volunteer to hospitals just to gain experience. 3 years after passing the board exam came the opportunity of going abroad. I went to the Middle East to practice nursing in a psychiatric and drug rehab hospital. It was probably the most difficult days of my life to be away from my family for the first time. And it will not only be days, but years. Big language barrier, as I have zero stock of Arabic language. No social media then, no mobile phones. The cheapest way to get in touch with your family is via letters that takes weeks to arrive. Phone calls via phone cabins that cost a fortune just to hear your loved one's voices for a few minutes. But with the help of colleagues and kababayans local in there, I managed to push through and survive. I managed to last for 8 years. By the way, managed to get married within those 8 years. I arrived here in UK in 2004 as a pensioner, meaning jobless for 8 months. Within the 8 months, I took a retest for IELTS to boost my score a little bit. I've been itching for work, wanting to earn and help my wife. And as I came with a dependent visa, probably as most of you can relate, those who are in the same year that I arrived, I enrolled myself in some computer classes, previously called the ECDL or the European Computer Driving License, taking a plumbing and electrician course, attended the Essence of Care course in Chelsea and Westminster, and then I ended up in Northwick Park after a friend gave me a number to call to start or to attend the supervised practice. So this is the start of my career with the NHS. Supervised practice, probably most of you have encountered this one. We need to be supervised within 3 to 6 months before getting our NMC PIN. We are considered as a third-year student on last placement, awaiting signed off. But now I think this is different. My cohort probably is the last one to have this supervised practice. Now universities are involved to gain registry. So I was signed off by my mentor on my fourth month and applied for a band 5, which was then band D. And when while waiting for my PIN, fortunately enough, I was absorbed and continued to enhance my knowledge and skills in the field of surgical nursing and eventually settled in. The transition coming over to the UK was not difficult for me as I have my family to start with, and being an OFW W is an advantage, an ex-Saudi as we call it. I think it is a given trait to every Filipino, nurse or not, the ability to adapt to an environment and in a given situation. I think our coping mechanism is so strong that we tend to find ways to divert boredom, like watching movies or doing shopping. Work schedule continues to be an obstacle, so I decided to invade my wife's workplace, which is in the NICU, after I got an encouragement from her matron to apply. So then I applied, but believe it or not, I was discouraged by my own wife. Probably she knows why my capability, but I took it as a challenge. But now I am band 7 and she's still band 6. Oh, I think she's watching. But kidding aside, title and designation is only written on your CV. What makes you a better leader is the way or how you treat the people around you. I spent a lot of hours sitting, listening to lectures and courses I studied, mentorship, special care module, high dependency intensive care module. Writing essays to complete the requirements. It was a long but fruitful journey. There was always ups and downs, but you fight to survive. I'm currently working as a sister first nurse at Queen Charlotte's and Chelsea Hospital, which is one of the 2 neonatal units of Imperial College NHS Trust. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Albert, for taking us back to memory lane. I think a lot of us heard the magic word. A lot of Filipinos would hear Jollibee. And now I'm quite hungry. So anyway, but that was very good. Also on top of that, we could relate to a lot of the changes that you had to bear. So yeah. So for our next speaker, he is a Florence Nightingale Scholar and currently is a clinical nurse manager at Royal Marsden NHS. Please welcome Mr. Jan Arriola. Visit FilipinoUKNurse.com for Filipino UK nurses made by Filipino UK nurses for articles like this, or this.
Oh, hi. Thank you. Thank you, Madam George. I would like to say good evening to all nurses and other professions watching in the UK right now, and also would like to send my greetings across different countries who is with us here watching the first webinar. I am here to share my journey as an overseas nurse in the UK, as what they say, nursing with the Millennials. So the moment I land from London Heathrow up to the latest aspects in my career. I am from Rojas City, Capiz, that is in the Visayas region of the Philippines. I finished my nursing degree back in 2012 at Philomar Christian University, and I will forever be grateful for all my clinical instructors who trained me to become the nurse that I am today. Our section is in college. It was named after Dr. Teresita Barcelo. She was the former PNA national president. I've met her during my graduation, and that conversation with her, that started my journey, my aspirations, and how to become a really good nurse someday. In my life, I've encountered a lot of challenges, a lot of rejections. Many people question my abilities, some even family members, some even saying like, stop going to school because your family can afford it, because back home, nursing course is expensive in the Philippines. Things like that. But there are also people who believe in my capabilities. One of them was my late uncle, who suddenly passed away back home during my first week here. I was very broken at that time, but I brought myself up and I said, I need to get myself together and prepare for a new chapter. So I'll take you back to 4 years ago. I started my London dream when the NHS employer visited Philippines back in 2012. Back in 2015. After a successful interview, I started reviewing for IELTS, that is the English test. It took me 3 attempts before I managed to get the required rating in one sitting. So if there are still others out there who are working on your IELTS and OET, keep going, because someday you'll get there. After that, I took the CBT, which was all about nursing competencies, and then I started to process my visa. Took me a year, and finally I moved to the UK in 2016 and started as a Band 4 healthcare assistant at London Northwest. London Northwest covers Central Middlesex, Ealing Hospital, and Northwick Park Hospital. So everything was new to me when I arrived, and although already a nurse back home, the way nursing is practiced in the UK is different. The holistic approach from patients' admission, giving full care to them who are dependent for the activities of daily living, using state-of-the-art technologies, performing a lot of nursing procedures. These are all new experiences. One thing I can say, nurses here are empowered and treated well by other teams. we are not considered as doctors' assistants. Our colleagues make us feel we are valued members of the healthcare team. It's also my first time living on my own, away from my comfort zone, away from my family. Homesickness is always there, but I remind myself I came here for them and will do my best for my family to be proud of me. Going back, my first line manager was a Filipino. She was strict, Sister Vien, she was strict but very professional. She's a leader that inspired me to do my best every day. As I am still adjusting, I was prone in committing errors and always get called in the office back then. But my mentors explained to me very well what I can do to improve next time. I have worked with different nationalities, and I commend each and every one. But the support I got from my own Filipino colleagues are far beyond amazing. In the UK, we are treated as a vital part of the NHS. No matter what your job is, a domestic cleaner, a kitchen hostess, a nurse, a healthcare assistant, a physiotherapist, an OT, or a doctor, we Filipinos, we have become a huge part of the NHS. I was part of the new program of the NMC, wherein you have to take OSCEs as the last stage before you can qualify as a nurse. We had rigorous classroom and clinical trainings. A massive thanks to Christina Ward. She was my first teacher back here abroad. Going forward, I became a Band 5 staff nurse in acute medicine. It was a fast-paced environment, looking after acutely unwell patients admitted from A&E. A 12-and-a-half-hour shift can be very exhausting, but the knowledge and skills I have gained are priceless. After a year of qualification, I took the challenge and I applied as a Band 6 charge nurse in the same ward, and my leadership skills were put into tests. I have always a passion for quality improvement, and I was able to help implement QI projects in our department. Being a nurse in the NHS is not all just work. We are blessed to be given annual leave to a minimum of 27 calendar days plus bank holidays, and it goes higher when your tenure goes longer. So in a span of 4 years, I've already went home 3 times to the Philippines, which I always look forward to. There's also a time for travel. In my own personal experience, I have visited most of the countries in Europe with friends and sometimes on my own. I enjoy my own company and also being able to learn new culture and see places which before I can never imagine going to. It's a life and work balance, I must say. I had the most amazing opportunity when I was accepted by Florence Nightingale Foundation as one of their scholars for the NHS 70 Leadership Program. Just a massive thanks to Professor Greta Westwood, some of them you may know them, Professor Siobhan Gregory, for such a very humbling opportunity. Since then, a lot of opportunities happened in my career. I became motivated in what I do, and I strive to do more. Back then, the NMC, the Nursing and Midwifery Council, who is the professional regulator of nurses in the UK, featured me on the centenary video for 100 years of nursing with the theme Always Caring, Always Nursing, and gave me an opportunity to be one of the 4 speakers at St. Thomas Hospital last year. Meeting the nursing leaders that night, being able to engage in a conversation with them, it feels surreal. That was the time when I realized that any person from any background can be whoever they want to be as long as they are passionate and dedicated in what they do. Just like me, a brown boy from the Philippines managed to achieve my goals in my career. Thank you to Andrea Sutcliffe, the NMC Chief Executive, for being so wonderful during our meeting. I'm also grateful for my previous manager before I moved to my recent job, Kathy Caruthers from London Northwest. She's the current Deputy Head of Site Operations, who believed in my capacity since day one and never questioned my abilities. She has supported me when I took the challenge to become an associate clinical site practitioner or a bed manager, managing the hospital. I worked 3 across hospital sites, attending to medical emergencies, cardiac arrests, as well as making sure patient flow is being implemented. There will be conflicts that will arise. Not all people will like what you do, but as long as you do your job without stepping into others, your work will be fantastic. I must say, I have grown and matured not only as a nurse, but as an individual. I definitely miss my colleagues at Ealing Hospital, especially my kuyas and ates. They were my first NHS family. Recently, 2020, I joined the world-renowned Royal Marsden Hospital, known for treating patients affected by cancer. Although not an oncology nurse by experience, I am thankful for the opportunity given to me by my new employer. It's my first role as a Band 7 ward manager, handling both clinical assessment unit and the Macmillan hotline. I'm still adjusting, but so far my new colleagues are amazing. I met Melissa, she's a Filipino, she's one of the advanced nurse practitioners, and she's very helpful to me. I also had meetings with Chief Nurse Eamon Sullivan, who became the Director of Nursing at the Nightingale Hospital when we opened for that COVID-19 pandemic. Meetings with DND, Divisional Nurse Director Andrew. So it's just a good feeling that the new employer is very supportive for new starters like me. I really wanted to pursue my studies in this field, and this will be a great avenue for me to become an even greater nurse someday. Before I left my old trust, Lisa Knight, the chief nurse, told me that someday I can be a chief nurse. The same conversation I had with Eamon, the current chief nurse, who asked me what I aspire the most. That is a dream, but for me, taking one step at a time is important. Being able to learn, being able to do my best in every job role I have. It's just such a joyous feeling to hear this from nursing leaders of their caliber. Being able to be recognized is a great feeling. However, what really matters to me is my daily interaction with my patients. Most especially now, I am looking after patients affected by cancer. The conversations behind those curtains and making them feel better are far more significant than any laurels or titles that can be added on your name. Most patients will cry in front of us, will share their stories, their struggles with their diseases, and I just feel sorry for them. As nurses, the most we can do is provide them with a good patient experience. I always see to it that we use our resources in order to deliver an outstanding service to people, and always remember my NMC code in whatever I do. So that concludes my latest in my career, and I'm still looking forward to what lies ahead. My advice for nurses back in the Philippines, if you're watching right now, or in other countries who wish to pursue a career here in the UK, go for it. I believe this will be a decision that you won't regret in your lifetime. To my colleagues who are already in the UK, for all of us watching here, to your colleagues who are not watching, let us just work together. I can say that if we are working together, we are really going to be able to deliver the best service to our people. After all, we are the world's most trusted profession, and each single day we have the opportunity to prove that. Thank you, PNA-UK. Thank you for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Albert Mallari. Did I say that? Mr. Mallari. Yes. Because medyo na ano, okay. I can so much relate with the challenges and opportunities you have faced as a millennial nurse. And let me just say, I agree so much with you that nurses here are empowered and treated as a vital part of the team, which is so different from how we practice in the Philippines. And I even said in one of my blogs that I realized that I have never been so discriminated as a nurse than when I was in my own country. But here in the UK, pursuing your career is so attainable. So thank you so much for that lovely speech. And for our, sorry, Mr. John, that was Mr. John Arriola again. I'm so sorry about that. So for our next speaker, he is a senior Band 6 nurse in the Royal Brompton Hospital, and he would be sharing his experience of nursing during the pandemic. Please welcome Mr. John Alex Melencho.
Hi, good evening to everyone who is watching right now. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Philippine Nurses Association of United Kingdom for giving me this opportunity to share my story in this webinar and to inspire or render motivation to my colleagues, especially to those who are still battling this pandemic up to this day. I hope and pray that I could serve my purpose. So yeah, here's my story. I just started a new job in Royal Brompton Hospital, and it was also the period when the lockdown began. After a long day shift in a COVID risk managed area last 26th of March, I was having this fatigue and I was feeling so tired, despite of the fact that I only had a benign duty on that day. I came home, had a sumptuous supper, and then slept. Then my symptomatic experience actually began with this uncontrollable shaking and a high-grade fever of 39.9 degrees Celsius. The clinical manifestations gradually showed up. As days passed by, I was having already this dry cough, nausea, loss of appetite, loss of sense of taste or smell, dizziness, sleep disturbance, and other related symptoms. I called and sought help from NHS 111 several times, but they just said to me that I just need to self-isolate for 7 days. But my symptoms got worse, and after 9 days, I really felt that I really need further treatment and management as much as possible in the hospital. I could not tolerate anymore the symptoms. Would you imagine having a fever, continuous fever, specifically high-grade fever, for how many days already, in spite of regularly taking paracetamol every 6 hours? It was so worrisome. Good thing that my best friend, who was also my flatmate, helped me in my activities of daily living. For some people, this concerned period of 7 to 10 days is already enough for them to enter into a pace of recovery. But for others like me, it's a different story, as it was just the beginning of a worse scenario. Consequently, I called NHS 111 again, and finally, I was able to convince the clinical assessor to send an ambulance to possibly bring me to the hospital. So they sent the ambulance and the paramedics came to our flat. But they only said, based on their findings, that I just need further self-isolation, so they did not pick me up. I was so saddened, but still my scrupulous faith in God did not waver, because I felt that He's the only one who can save me at that very moment. I surpassed that night with seemingly unending fever, and at that point with an arising shortness of breath, accompanied by the news that I'm positive with COVID-19, based on the test that was done to me the previous day. After that positive result, I fervently prayed that my sufferings would be over. And then there's this voice, maybe that's God's voice, whispering to me that I need to go to the emergency department as soon as possible. So the next day, I went to the A&E department of Charing Cross Hospital, which is the nearest hospital in our place. And that was the 5th of April. I was triaged and then sent to a consultation area where they properly assessed me. So blood tests, chest x-ray, and physical examination were done. I was quite relieved because there was something that was already happening to me at that moment to address my condition. And I was being taken care of as well by the people that I work with, as I was doing some bank shifts in that emergency department before. So based on my chest x-ray, there were mid-lower zone areas of patchy airspace shadowing and atelectasis, which are highly suggestive of COVID-19. It was so frightening because I was only seeing this term atelectasis before in the books or in my patient's records, but at that time, I was experiencing it myself. Nevertheless, my CRP and neutrophil counts were sky high. And then they subjected me to this 60% Venturi mass at 10 liters per minute oxygen flow rate. Due to my poor condition, I was placed to the most critical section of the emergency department, the resus section, for closer monitoring. The devil's voice was indeed working, and it was like murmuring to me, telling me that I would further deteriorate and then I would get worse. But I kept praying and listening to religious songs. My unwavering faith in God did not falter, and I kept my spiritual being intact. So I continuously prayed, and then my loving partner, my best friend, Ninong, Ninang, and my family and relatives back home, they're already contacting me, but I could not really talk to them because I was already having this difficulty of breathing, and I could not really talk for a long time. So apart from the oxygen support, as they were already considering pneumonia as well, they commenced me with intravenous and oral antibiotics, which I had for 5 days. So after a few hours, I was moved to the acute medical unit and was admitted into a cohort room with somebody else who's positive with COVID-19. Eventually, they weaned me down to 40% and then 30%, 35% Venturi. 40% and then 35% Venturi. But, I was still feeling not good at that time. It was too much for me to bear. So I just continued to pray relentlessly. It was my unwavering faith in God that really helped me a lot. And then the thought that I was already improving at that moment was just really a thought that is already like leading to an impending doom. I survived one night, but the next day my oxygen saturation suddenly plummeted to like 86, 87%. And my heart rate became so high, ranging from like 130 to 140 beats per minute. So obviously they put me into high flow non-rebreathe mask at 15 liters per minute, attached me to the cardiac monitor. They did serial ECGs and I had further blood tests. Apparently my sodium level was just 128 millimoles per liter. So a liter of normal saline was administered to me as a fast drip. So I thought that I will not really improve already, and I thought I was already going to die. But in the midst of all of these things, I kept praying and listening to religious songs just to uplift my spirit. And I did not entertain any of these negative thoughts that were already disturbing my mind at that pressing moment. With God's grace, I survived another night and eventually weaned down to 35% Venturi at 8 liters per minute. And then after a couple of days, down to 2 liters per minute via nasal specs. I was really joyful because a miracle was indeed happening to me at that time. But I continued to pray relentlessly. Finally, they took me off from the oxygen. Of course, there was an intense fear initially because I had been reliant with the oxygen for how many days already. My oxygen sats was just 93% on room air. But as per medical consultant, that should be expected for somebody who's already recovering from COVID-19 in the hospital. And then they told me that I could already be discharged. But I really insisted to them to let me stay another night just to ensure that I would be stable enough to go home without any oxygen support. And I was so blessed that I became quite stable overnight. And then after 5 days of tribulation, I was discharged. My independence was slowly going back. Gradually, day by day, I was getting better and better. A good friend of mine even lent her pulse oximeter so that I could monitor my heart rate and oxygen sats at home. So after a week, my oxygen sats climbed to 96%, though I was still having shortness of breath on exertion, and my heart rate remained more than 100, like for 3 weeks. It was really, really scary. But keeping in touch with my family virtually back home, doing some regular exercises, being more prayerful as well, and even cooking yet eating my favorite dishes. These were all the means that helped me to recuperate quicker. Then after almost a month of rest, I went back to work. But my line manager was still telling me that I could have more time to fully recover. But I emphasized to her that I would love to be more productive again and I would love to serve as a nurse again. And then when I came back to work, all of these nurses in different specialties, even those people who are working in non-respiratory wards, had converged to work in a common unit, a battleground for COVID-19, in which all of us were like astronauts wearing these full PPEs in every shift. And I knew that some of them were really unhappy Some of them were too anxious with the possibility that they can get the virus as well. But there were others that I really look up to because they were really strong enough and they really accepted the call of their duty. We're quite lucky that we got lots of supplies for our PPEs. But there were some nursing colleagues in other hospitals and trusts who did not experience wearing these full PPEs at all times whilst battling the corona. My overall experience brought by this disease is actually the most challenging experience that I have ever encountered in my 29 years of existence. It was a matter of life and death for me. My strengths and weaknesses were tested. Tiring, yes. Painful, yes. Physically yet psychologically challenging. So if I just surrendered, I could really have died with COVID-19. But above all else, it was a test of my faith. I was pushed to my limits in terms of my full trust and confidence in God and in His ways. Never did I lose hope and never did I let go of my faith in Him since the day one that I contracted the disease. As the adage says, let your faith be bigger than your fear. Nonetheless, I was able to witness the most significant things or virtues in this world. And those are kindness, patience, compassion, and above all, love. I really felt all of this from my colleagues, my friends, my loving partner, and my family. Even though they were not there physically with me, I still felt their love towards me, even in the little yet sincere ways, as they sent me foods, supplies, cards, and even these virtual images wherein they were holding these papers with their well wishes and messages of hope. And that's actually one of the gargantuan challenges when you got sick with this COVID-19, as no one can even visit you or touch you to comfort you. In addition, I realized the real sufferings and sorrows that patients are going through, as I myself became a patient at that time. It's really never easy to be a patient. I've known with my COVID-19 experience that I can actually be a grueling patient, you know. Yes, I kept pressing the call bell whenever I would sense that my temperature would spike and whenever I would love to have my intravenous paracetamol. So with my personal experience with COVID-19, I already better understand now the words of Florence Nightingale that for the sick, it is important to have the best. Last but not the least, from the list of my realizations with my COVID-19 experience is the strong thought about the significance of a support group in the midst of a pandemic. I was just fortunate that I have a big or a good circle of friends, a great trust that supported and helped me in my battle against COVID-19. But I just found disturbing that some of our nursing colleagues were not supported well enough, especially in the provision of full PPEs. And some even died due to COVID-19 without even experiencing the kindness and generosity that they deserve. And that's actually one of the future valuable missions that PNA-UK is trying to endeavor. I know that with your great support, my dear colleagues who are watching right now, this vision will not be impossible. So there you go. That's my COVID-19 experience, and those are my realizations. I do hope that I was able to give you somehow a sort of inspiration, or if not, I was able to render some reflections, learning insights, or even life lessons. So please keep safe and wear the necessary PPEs until now if needed. Be positive, but not with the virus, but with your outlook in life, because at the end, this pandemic shall pass. And just spread love and not the virus. Thank you for your patience and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Alex. That was quite moving talk. It's amazing that you've shared the both spectrums, I mean, the full spectrum of COVID, from being a carer to a patient, and then, coming back again. That's great. Now, for our next speaker, let us support Mel as she introduces our very special guest. Mel, who's our next speaker?
Hello. So I am very honored to introduce our very special guest, as I have so much respect in her achievements. I would say that she is very inspirational. She is a Florence Nightingale Scholar, Diversity and Inclusion Champion, RCN BAME Rising Star Champion in 2019, a lifetime member of the Nepalese Nursing Association UK. Currently, she is an ICU sister at West Middlesex Hospital, Chelsea, and Westminster Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. Wow. Female power. So please welcome Miss Chitra Sanjel.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Now introduce me. I'm Chitra. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, Filipino Nursing Association, for inviting me. I feel really honored to be here. I'm going to talk to you about nursing together with the Filipino colleagues during COVID-19. I have been working in the intensive care for the last 6 years, and I work with colleagues from all over the world, with majority of the colleagues from the Philippines. And some of the patients even call me a Filipino. My mentor, when I started in the intensive care 6 years ago, was a Filipino, and my team leader still is a Filipino. So I've always learned from the best. We recently hired in my intensive care 10 Band 5 nurses, and out of 10, 8 were from the Philippines. So we're most of us colleagues are Filipinos. That's our team. But we're a very multicultural team, very close knitted, and love to socialize with each other when we go out from work. We're so good in organizing parties at work with homemade cuisine, especially the Filipino cuisines. And we do organize annual summers. I do ITU day in a park with family, bringing foods, playing games. And our Filipino colleagues are really good in organizing Christmas parties, and we have so much fun together. But unfortunately, due to COVID and social distancing rules, most of this has not happened this year. Normally, ICU nursing is 1:1 as set out by standards of intensive care society, but COVID has made this impossible to maintain. So it has to be changed to 1:6, with 1 ICU nurse supervising ward nurses. And nurses came from all specialties to help in ICU, from ward to community to specialist nurses to recovery theaters and even pediatrics. The nurses who came from the pediatrics were mostly Filipinos, and they said that in the Philippines, pediatric nurses were also adult trained, unlike in the UK. And it was very easy to supervise those Filipino nurses, as most of them already had ITU experience in the Philippines. And those nurses really liked working in our ICU during COVID times, that they applied to work with us as a permanent staff, and they have recently started working with us now. My hats off to those nurses who's agreed to come to work in ICU during those challenging times, and that they've worked in a completely new environment. Without their help, it would have been impossible to look after those critically ill patients. During normal times, looking after one critically ill patient takes all the time of one ICU nurse. So imagine how we work non-stop without break at times, as there would be no another ICU nurse to cover for us during the break to provide care for those patients. It was overwhelming, and on top of that, wearing that PPE for 12.5 hours was the biggest challenge. Like the known statistics, we all know that most of the patients affected by COVID in our ICU were also from BAME, and they were men. Being a BAME myself, and both me and my husband are working as a key worker I was scared of this fact from the beginning when our unit started filling up with BAME patients, and most of them were all male. But risking our lives, we both continued to provide service throughout the whole pandemic. The fact that lots of healthcare professionals died in line of the duty during COVID breaks my heart. It should never have been like that. Nobody should come to work and then die in line of the duty. As we all know that the review by Public Health, the recent review by Public Health England revealed that the proportion of COVID-19 infection was highest among the Asian ethnic groups, and the risk of dying from the virus was higher in BAME groups than in the white ethnic group. And on top of that, we also know that disproportionate number of deaths is from the Filipino health and care workers in the UK, and this concern is now being discussed at national and international level. Another big thing is the emotional burden of working during COVID, and it cannot be overlooked. There were shifts where I looked after 4 patients and 2 of them died, and I had to do last offices for both of them. And by the end of the shift, I had to receive another COVID patient who was struggling to breathe, and they had to be intubated and put on the ventilator. We all as a team have felt the loss of patients, both young and old, and they went without any family present. That's the hardest bit, I think, providing end-of-life care to patients without family around. And we come on the shift to hear that one we thought was going to make didn't make it, and they died. And then going home and being unable to switch off from work-related events, unable to sleep, physical exhaustion, and back to work again another day for another shift. This is the story of all healthcare professionals working in the ITU during pandemic. So these events have had psychological impact on all of us. But the good thing is we've had a couple of listening and debriefing events in my trust after the surge was over. Personally, I would say it would have been good to have them during the surge period, while all the staff from various departments who came to help us were still with us. I had Filipino nurses who came to help us from the wards, struggling to cope with their emotions, as they had never seen so many deaths in a shift, and being told to prepare for another admission after that. They said that they lived alone in the UK and being far from the family and working in the COVID red zone, that they were really scared, and their family back in the Philippines were really, really worried. What if they catch the virus too? What if they get sick and they were alone in their flats? They were really scared. But I was able to direct them to the psychological support helpline set up by the trust for staff. I myself was in the brink of emotional collapse. I spoke to my seniors and matron about it, and I was directed to this helpline. I would not have been able to function if I had not used the service. So I'm really grateful that we had that service. There were well-being hubs set up by the trust as well for the well-being of the staff. But we in ICU were really busy. We were not able to access this during the peak of pandemic because we had no sufficient cover for breaks. And coping with emotional impact of COVID, I think, is much like fighting the virus itself. It will not happen overnight. Many nurses, myself included, are really feeling the strains of the weeks of physical intense and emotional draining work that we've been through. We've never seen a challenge like this, and I hope never to see any of such thing in my career again. The experience I've had in the last few months dealing with COVID-19 will stay with me forever. Recovery from this tragedy will take time. The emotional wounds, I think, can be harder to heal than the physical injury. Nonetheless, the positive that came out of the pandemic in healthcare was that the multidisciplinary work it would take months for some services to happen in the normal circumstances, whereas during the COVID, the services merged overnight, and the help arrived from all departments in the hospital. I hope this positive attitude to listening to each other and working together will remain forever, not only during the pandemic. And finally, Filipino nurses are the backbone of the NHS, I would say. They're hardworking and they always give 100% to the job. I have been mentored by Filipinos, like I said earlier, and it has been a privilege to work alongside them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chitra. That was a very touching aspect you mentioned there. You mentioned the Filipino nurses are the backbone of NHS nursing. Very, very humbled to be part of that. Thank you very much. And now, on to our next speaker. He is the head of nursing and quality and in the psychological medicine and older adults directorate at the South London and Maudsley NHS Foundations Trust. He is also an LGBTQ champion and a member of the BAME Senior Male Network. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Oliver Soriano.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I think before I start, because I've got a very short period of time to actually give you a spiel of what I'll say, I just want to actually say a massive thank you for all of our speakers to openly expressing their personal experience. Most specifically, well, for everyone, for Albert, for John, for Alex and Chitra. I think it's very inspiring hearing you. But also, I just want to actually recognize the presence of some of our leaders, Filipino leaders in the UK and around. So I can see Mr. Peter Ruben Calixto, who is the past PNA America president and a co-founder. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate you joining us all over from the United States. I also managed to see, I think, Miss Myla Angeles, who's also the Filipino community leader in Woolwich and Greenwich community. Now, there were people who were meant to join us, and I'm hoping that they're actually with us, but I just want to acknowledge as well Mr. Roland Sotelo, who's the previous PNA-UK Public Relations Officer, Ms. Arlene Navarro, who's the Chief Nursing Officer of Dar As Siha Medical Center at Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Vic Babe, former PNA-UK President in 2004, and Georgia Spiliopoulos. I'm not sure whether she's here, but she's interested in doing a research with regards to Filipinos' experiences, not only in COVID-19, but all throughout the experiences in their nursing career. So I just want to say a massive thank you. I know I don't want to cut it short, but I just want to give you a round of applause for all the wonderful things, for taking time to come here, for taking time to listen to our colleagues here in the UK. I will start by briefly just saying what Florence Nightingale have made a quotation of. And what she said is she thinks that one's feelings outweigh themselves in words that they should actually be distilled into actions, because she believes that into actions we will get results. So what we have facilitated today as a core committee member, as an interim core committee member of the PNA-UK, our aim is to actually listen to those colleagues who are in the UK working in different areas. Either you're working in the NHS, working in a GP practice, working in a primary care or a private sector. We want to hear not only the ones who's been here for 22 years, like me, but we want to hear as well the experiences of new nurses that just came from the Philippines, or probably that just came from Singapore or from the Middle East. Our aim in the PNA-UK is to have one voice to represent the Filipino nurses in the wider UK nursing agenda and beyond. And with our networks with Chitra from the Nepalese Nursing Association and other networks, as well our engagement with Peter's team in America, our aim is to actually get that network revived, to invigorate it, to ensure that like we always have our backs to actually be listened and that we can actually start sharing our experiences. As an interim committee member, my role, together with some of my colleagues here, is to ensure that like we will drive up the issues around the experiences, not only by the Filipinos, but also with our BAME colleagues in the UK. As what George says, I was, and I am at the moment, a BAME senior male nurse member, and I join up with a different male senior nurses in the UK. And my aim is to actually represent the Philippines and the Filipino nurses to hear their voices, their experiences. But more so, we don't just want to actually hear the issues, the concerns, but we also want to actually hear and champion your creativity, your successes. If you've got a paper that you have published, we want to hear that, because those are the ways that we can actually establish ourselves as we go along. My intention of doing this talk is to just give you a summation of what has happened just now. And that is like, as a Filipino nurse, I have gone through the same experience that every one of you have gone through. And rightly so, with all my colleagues who have expressed that like we have been supported one way or another by our Filipino colleagues. We have been supported by non-Filipino colleagues as well. But what I want to put forward to you all is to that identifying that Philippine Nurses Association UK will be there to support you as well. So we will be opening the section now, because I believe I've only got 12 minutes. So we've got 12 minutes to actually open for any questions, comments, or suggestions. And I believe there will be a few more questions. So some of my colleagues here who are the interim core committee members might be able to answer it, but like I will try my best to answer your questions. And if I will not be able to answer your question, we will get back to you to share that answer. So fire away, George, for any question.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Oliver Soriano, for tying everything up for us. And that's very inspiring and lovely closing speech. So yeah, we are open for question and answers. There was one question I was told to ask. It's for Mr. Alex. Do you know how you contacted COVID-19? And do you think your employer could have done something that could have prevented you contacting COVID?
Honestly, until now, I'm still puzzled where I got this COVID-19 virus, because during that time that I was working in the COVID risk managed area, my patients were not really like confirmed positive yet. So perhaps I could have gotten this from the public, because I've been traveling to and from work without wearing masks in the bus or or generally in the public transport. But as for my employer, I think they've been really good enough when it comes to ensuring that the staff will be well protected, because they gave us a lot of supplies when it comes to full PPE. During the time that we converged into a one unit to battle this COVID-19, we can actually wear like 4 times a day of these full PPEs, like disposing them every now and then. So I think they've done really, really good enough for us to be protected. So I could not really like complain about it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for answering that question. The next question I would have to direct to Oliver. The question is, I think this one's from Lisa Stan. So I just have to read it. What are the steps or prevention measures as BAME members that our organization have done? And what could we do in the future as an organization?
So to everyone, you probably have already seen the message from our Chief Nursing Officer, Ruth May. And one of that is feeling to ensure that the risk assessment for all. Initially, it was started a risk assessment for our BAME colleagues. Now it's actually being shared for everyone. So that's one of the actions that the NHS have started to ensure that we are having our own risk assessment to ensure that we are safe in our area of work. There are, and which Chitra have already emphasized, is there are other ways of supporting aside from PPEs. Psychological resilience, or the well-being group or hubs that's being set up by the different NHS trusts. And I would expect as well for our private sectors and in the primary sectors, that's one way of actually learning from it. So I think overall, we have learned. I know it's been quite difficult, but I can agree that from what we have learned here is that we can develop a system to ensure that if this happens again, or if what they're saying is the second wave, I'm hoping that we're better prepared and that BAME colleagues are able to actually speak out rather than just I think when Chitra and I were having a chat, we always say that Filipino nurses tends not to actually complain. Philippine nurses tends to actually just work, even though it's difficult, work their job, and they're gonna go home. And I think we have this opportunity now, not only from the risk assessments, but networks like the Philippine Nurses Association, okay, for you to have a voice so that we can put this out to the Chief Nursing Officer, or we can work with Yvonne Coghill. I'm working directly with Yvonne Coghill, which is our director for the REST, which is the Workforce Equality Group. So there's a lot of ways that we can actually help each other. And this is one of the ways that we're actually facilitating Filipino Nurses Association UK. So that would be my answer, but I just want to also shout out, Ma'am Susan Cueva is actually on the group as well. And she's one of the leading, person in Kanlungan. So thank you as well, Ms. Susan Cueva, for being present in this meeting today.
All right. Thank you so much for answering that question, Mr. Oliver Soriano. I actually, I agree with you on that. Filipino nurses, we do not tend to ask questions. I actually included that on one of my vlogs. And yeah, so I believe that we should speak out more. And this is one of the reasons why I am joining PNA UK as well, because I believe that we can make a difference. So is there any other question here?
So can I just then say, if there's not enough question running, but please do get in touch. Few things that I just want to actually highlight for everyone. In the coming weeks, we are planning to actually have our membership forum. So I would like to put that out to those who wants to know how to become a member. We will put it out hopefully in 2 weeks' time. So the way to do it is please visit our Facebook page. Our IT and communication team will be able to actually share to you how you can join our membership forum. And in the coming few weeks, what I would just like to emphasize is that this is not just one-off. We will be running this as a rolling World Cafe session. We would like to invite nurses who just came in 6 months or 2 years ago, because we want you to have a forum for you to actually share your experience. We also want to invite those who works in different sites or different areas. I can see that Mr. Richie is working in GP surgery, primary care, if I may right. And there are other nurses who are actually working in a different level, but for example, a research nurse. So we are, Miss Cello is here, who's actually shared, one of our advisors is actually here, who hopefully will be giving us some webinars or workshop about research and literatures. I'm also wanting to actually see, because I've seen Wensum Thomas and Miss Joyce Spill on my screen. I know there's a lot But I just want to say your words of support for the PNA-UK. I've just been reading it. It's very, very helpful, and thank you so much. So as I said, this is not a one-off. We have few more happening in the coming few weeks. We will be inviting, not specific for Filipinos, but also other colleagues, and Chitra has been very instrumental to support us on this. Hopefully, at one point, we might invite Miss Joy, or we might invite Miss Winsome. So there are a few of us here, and what we want to do is that, like, even though this is Philippine Nurses Association UK, as what Chitra said, you always welcome of being a Filipino, an honorary Filipino members. And we love working with other people, and that's why we made sure that we've got someone who will be representing to speak about their relationship and their working partnership with Filipinos. So there will be a few more, hopefully. The other thing is, like, once COVID-19 has finished, our hope is just like we will have a one big gathering where we can actually share our own expertise, express our issues and concerns, and we are inviting, again, everyone on this. So I just want to put that out because I've only got 3 more minutes, so I just want to share that across to everyone.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Oliver. So we have a post-event survey posted in the chat box. If you guys can please complete that survey or fill that up for us. The link again is in the chat box. And George?
Hello, sorry. This is just the end. So I just want to make sure that everybody's happy with this. I mean, thank you very much for attending.
Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United. Mom knows best, put your worries to rest when staying in the United Kingdom. Mom knows best.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join our Facebook group, Filipino UK Nurse. Sign up to our website, www.filipinouknurse.com.